We just got back from a Rain Cow Horse show in Andalusia, Alabama, and getting unloaded, getting everything put back. But I wanted to go over what our preparation is the week before a show, so you can see what we do with the horses and everything, preparing for the show. And I'll go over that with you now. So the week of a show, before you go to a show, your routine is typically going to change. And I'm going to tell you what our routine is the week before we go to a show. We're leaving Thursday morning to go to a show out of state. The show is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll come back Monday morning. So the week of a show, a couple of the things that change are the horses that are showing. All the horses that show are shod, just about. The horses that are showing don't get any pasture turnout the week of the show. They're kept in a stall, they're exercised, they're ridden, but they don't get any pasture turnout. Reason for that is so they don't lose a shoe when they're turned out, and me being a scramble to try to get that shoe on the day before I leave to go to the show. So horses going to a show the week of the show are not turned out to pasture. So starting on Monday, which was yesterday, horses that are showing don't get turned out. They'll get ridden, they'll get exercised, but not turned out. Another thing that changes the week of the show is the exercise routine of the horses. All the horses that are showing are going to be shown Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they'll be shown fairly hard. A couple of them we're trying to win something, so they'll be shown pretty hard. So what I want the horse to do is I want that horse's energy to peak out at the show. Typically when I'm riding a horse during the week, I'll only ride it hard about 1 or maybe two days that we ride hard. I'll ride medium about 2 days, and then 1 day is pretty easy, because I don't want that horse to think that every time it's ridden it's going to be hard. So the week of the show, I kind of save my hard days for the weekend. So I'll have 1 day that's pretty easy, and I usually make that day the day before we leave. So the day before we leave, that riding is pretty easy. Lots of walking, a little bit of trotting, a little bit of bending and flexing. Not really doing any maneuvers. So the 2 days before that, I'll be working the horses at about a 50% level, 50% of the energy that I would ask for at the show or in general. That way I'm not wearing that horse down and having him worn down at the end of the week before we leave to go to the show. Another thing is the day before we leave to go to a show, the horses get bathed and groomed and all ready for the show. I'll ride the horses that I'm going to be showing lightly, but all of my students that are going to be showing, I don't let any of them ride, and I won't give any of them lessons. The reason being is the day before we leave to a show, my beginner riders are typically nervous. Even the ones that have shown a fair amount tend to be a little bit nervous. When they're nervous, they're going to be quicker with their hands, quicker with their legs. I don't want to create a problem that's going to carry over into the show. It's true that when we get there, the riders are going to be nervous, but the horses will be going into that situation coming off of a good ride with that rider, that owner, earlier in the week. So my students that are showing, do not ride their horse the day before we leave to go to the show. The other thing we do the day before we leave to go to a show, of course, we'll pack, make sure we have everything. We have some checklists that we work off of. Groom our horses. That way they're looking nice for the show. Jeez. I want to go into the show, the weekend of the show, set up as good as I can to be successful for the horse and the rider. And that's what my whole schedule leading up to the show, my whole schedule the week before going into a show is geared towards setting that horse up for success, setting the rider up for success. So when we're showing and everybody's going to be showing a pattern, if it's a pattern class that they're entered in, and if we're like this weekend, we're showing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, everybody's going to have at least one pattern each day. And if they're showing twice in one day, there's going to be 2 patterns for that day. I don't have my students study the pattern until after they've completed the class before. So the class that they're riding in on Friday, they're to know that pattern going into the show. I don't care if they look at Saturday and Sunday's pattern, but they're not to study that pattern and not to try to memorize it. I don't want them to go into the weekend with the patterns all jumbled up in their head. When anybody is nervous for any reason, this isn't just horses, this is anything in life. When anybody is nervous, you breathe a little heavier, you take in a little bit more oxygen. That oxygen goes to your large muscles in your body. It doesn't go into your fine motor skills, and it doesn't increase the oxygen to your brain. Your brain will still function, but it doesn't function as good. Your brain is more into flight instinct, just like the horse, fight or flight. So things like memorizing your pattern, your brain is not going to do a good job of that when you're nervous. So we're only going to memorize one pattern at a time. We're not going to memorize the next pattern until we're finished showing that pattern. Okay, so when we're going to a weekend show like we're going to this weekend, we're showing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I typically have all of my horses come in the day before. So we'll all come in on Thursday. We'll come in on Thursday, we'll get a good meal on Thursday, we'll get everything unloaded, have a good meal, and we'll all ride Thursday in the arena where we're going to show. That gets the horse used to the arena. If there's anything in the arena that the horse is worried about, we'll take care of that. And we also, with the amateur riders, since we know the pattern going into the next day, Friday, we'll talk about the markers in the pattern. What should you be looking at when you're doing a run down this direction? What should you be looking at when you're doing a run down that direction? In your pattern, you're going to spin this way. You're going to spin towards the bleachers. You're going to spin towards the judge. You'll spin towards the concession stand. Things like that to help you with the pattern in your mind while you're showing. It's a lot easier to show a pattern if you have reference points. I want my riders thinking about how they're going to ride the maneuver, and then they have a reference point of whatever that reference point is. We're going to ride this way to that marker. Then after that, we'll perform this maneuver. Then we're going to ride this way to this maneuver. And that's how the practice goes on the night before the show. That sets the riders up for success, and it gets the horses in the pen that they're going to show in. And they're not worked very hard. We're not really working on the horse, we're working on the rider. We just want the horse comfortable in the pen. So I talked about what our program is before we leave to a show, and what I do with the horses, what their routine is the week before. Thought I might also talk about what the routine is when we come back from a show. Hank here showed this weekend, and had a nice ride on him. Want to check on him. He won his class, had a nice ride. And since we came back, we had a little bit of rain, cold weather. But what I like to do is when we first come back, that first night I put them out to pasture, let everybody move around because they was all stalled at a show. And then when that first ride, I mainly just walk. We walk, we chill out, kind of let them be a horse. I don't want them to stay hyped up from the show. Show is kind of a nervous environment for them, and some of them get a little bit of an upset stomach or diarrhea or something. That's pretty common, and sometimes you can show situations can kind of foster stomach ulcers and things like that. So when we get back, make the first ride or two after we get back just a calm, easy ride. Give them plenty of alfalfa cubes to help settle their stomach in case they were worried when they came back. So the horses that were shown, I wanted to get them out and just move them around, and then we'll start getting them back into their regular routine. It's always fun to go to shows out of town. I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you have not done a lot of out of town weekend shows or overnight shows. We've been doing it for 30 something years probably. In fact, while we were there, I met up with a friend of mine, Rob Huddleston, that when we was all showing back in the 1990s, he was still a youth rider and I was showing in non-pro, and just met up with him and ate and talked about all the good times that we've had showing back years ago. Really enjoyed having dinner with him and really enjoy hanging out with the people at the horse shows. It's a lot of fun. The Southern Rain Cow Horse shows are put on by Lee Alford, and he puts on a really nice show. And if you're interested in going to any cow horse shows, they're definitely enjoyable to go to. It's a family fun atmosphere, and we all really have a good time.